So we don't have much news in terms of the Centenary special, which is broadcasting in about a month and a half's time, possibly. But when it comes to the Russell T Davies 2 era, we're getting rampant rumours and speculation. This was the latest one that appeared on my desk. Here's the account Whovian_fanbase, where Rose Ayling-Ellis is rumoured to be the next companion after announcing her exit from EastEnders and after recently following Russell T Davies and Ncuti Gatwa on Instagram. Would you like Rose to be the next companion? Now, I don't actually know much about Rose Ayling-Ellis's acting because I do not watch EastEnders. However, I know that she made a massive impact on one of the latest seasons of Strictly Come Dancing. I actually think, didn't she win? Or she ranked very, very highly. However, Rose Ayling-Ellis is a deaf actress. So she is hard of hearing, she's deaf. That would mean that we technically would have a disabled companion. And there's been a lot of... and she won? Yeah, oh yeah, she won Strictly Come Dancing. Awesome stuff. So yeah, she would become a disabled companion. And this has actually been quite a bit of a topic of conversation over the past couple of weeks. There was this rumor with the Mirror back in the end of June, where they were hearing rumors that the TARDIS set that they're building for Russell T Davies 2 is going to be getting wheelchair ramps. Doctor Who's famous TARDIS getting makeover for new series and major change. The most interesting of all will be modifications to the famous time-travelling machine to make it wheelchair friendly. And disabled actress Ruth Madeley is the centre of the story. We don't know if she's going to be cast in the upcoming era of Russell T Davies 2, but she does play Hebe Harrison in the 6th Doctor Big Finish adventures, where she is in a wheelchair. She is a disabled companion. There's a great line of dialogue in the box set where she's been taken for a tour around the TARDIS. She comes back to the console room and she says, "Oh, there's so many ramps in here." And the Doctor says, yeah, the TARDIS has clearly adjusted its architecture and its geography to accommodate you because the TARDIS really likes you. And that's such a really cool detail that this time and space machine is able to accommodate itself. One of my funniest little observations, at least that I noticed when the story was first broadcast in 2009, was in The Waters of Mars. How does Gadget get to the console when he's been radio controlled by the Doctor to hit the switch? Because there's no ramps in the Tennant era TARDIS. And he's on tracks. How did he get to the console? I demand an explanation, Russell. Anyway, so there were these rumours that a TV insider saying that these modifications aren't just a sign of changing times, they're also down to some of the characters who will feature on the show. We've seen photos and footage of the late, great Bernard Cribbins when he was filming in Camden Market. He was in a wheelchair when he was reprising his role as Wilfred Mott. We also have Andy Pryor, who has done an interview for the Radio Times talking about the importance of casting as inclusively as possible for more disabled actors and disabled characters for the future of the show. He says that the show goes everywhere on this planet and others, and you don't want to see the same kind of people all the time. You don't want it to be exclusively middle-class white people speaking with received pronunciation accents. Pryor added that Davies feels the same way about diverse casting and that they are more keen than they've ever been to focus on inclusivity. So right now we're casting more diversity in terms of ethnicity, we're casting more disabled actors, but there's always more we can do. Certainly there's absolutely no excuse to not cast a disabled actor in a disabled role nowadays. For context, Andy Pryor has been the casting director for the entire revival run of Doctor Who, regardless of showrunner. He is the person who is behind the casting of Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, John Hurt, Capaldi, Whittaker, Gatwa, and all of the companions. And Sean Kelly, I can already smell the reaction videos from Neurotic. Oh, they've already been here. I've already done that reaction video where basically him and Heels versus Babyface were so visibly uncomfortable at the idea of Nadia Albina being in Doctor Who that they had to change the subject. Visibly uncomfortable. And it's very depressing that I think that conservatives have used the idea of disabled inclusivity as one of their culture war talking points, as one of their main positions, even though it is just a net good for the industry. For example, Chanya Button, who is rumoured but not fully confirmed to be directing the second of the rumoured 3 2023 60th anniversary specials, is recovering from spinal surgery, and the set of Doctor Who has been incredibly accommodating by helping her because she's got a walking stick now. While she's not, as far as I'm aware, formally disabled, recovering from major spinal surgery does put some physical limitations on you, and according to this Instagram post from Chanya Button, thank you Rusty Davis for creating an inclusive working environment and for never taking the stairs too fast. I'm reminded I'm exactly who I always was, a little slower for now, but perhaps a little stronger. As far as I'm concerned, concerned this is a net good for Doctor Who, but I did also want to talk about this with Doctor Who YouTuber Tharies. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. You're live on the stream. We can see your
Good, am
wonderful
I? Hello,
face.
everyone. Hello, stream. How are you? Hopefully, I'm coming through all right. I was just listening to the lead-in.
No,
Very nicely done. Very
no,
nicely done.
no. Thank you very much. Well, a lot of this, I actually didn't even notice the Chanya Button post until your recent video
Oh,
on
well, thank you.
no, I recommend that the viewers go watch it. I don't want you to like repeat everything because people should also watch that video as well.
Yeah,
But
sure.
but considering all of that context, what are your thoughts? Because you are, not to point out the obvious, you are a disabled Doctor Who fan.
Really?
You're
I hadn't noticed.
you're
Yeah, I do such a good job of hiding it. Do you know the
well.
weirdest comment I get is when people like, hadn't noticed you were disabled. It's like, I've not really done a good job at hiding it. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure it out.
When you're outside, you have to put on your life support system. There's the Cyberman helmet
I
over your
do.
right shoulder.
Yes, there is. I'm actually young John Lumick. I'm being groomed for a spin-off currently.
Yes.
It's in its early talks, but we'll see how we go. Yeah,
But
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So tell us your thoughts on this. I want to hear from your input.
So yeah, I obviously, as you mentioned, I did a video talking about this, and it was honestly probably the most personal I'd ever gotten in a video before. So it was quite a novelty for me. But as a kid, I obviously, like I assume everyone, I grew up watching Doctor Who, grew up loving Doctor Who, and there was always this part of me that, like, loved the idea of being part of it someday through any means possible. And but I always had a sort of subconscious fear that, oh, maybe it would be difficult because of my disability. Because even though now we like to think that we've made great strides in terms of diversity and representation. In fact, I was just recently looking at the diversity and inclusion strategy by the BBC. They've released their new one, and what I find most interesting is I believe the quota for how many like percentage of disabled workers in the workplace they want to employ has gone up to about, I think, 12%,
Mm.
which might not sound like loads, but when you consider, I think 2014, 2015, it was about 3-4%. So that's a massive, a jump of over like 10% almost. That's a massive jump. But you know, given how I grew up, I wasn't sure whether that was going to be a possibility. But what's been so special to me about, especially the upcoming era with all of the stuff we've been hearing about Chanya Button, the possibility of Rose Eiling-Ellis, who's a deaf actress, is that there's a very good chance I'm going to be seeing a lot of the people who are like me, for lack of a better term, doing the very things that I always wanted to do. And that's, I think, why representation is so important.
Yeah, I think that because the statistics you brought up, the fact that it's gone up from 3% to like 12% in just that short span of time, I think is a net good for the industry
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it is an incredibly unwelcoming and quite ableist industry, even for like able-bodied people, because there's a stigma. Don't ever sit down on sets. Don't ever be seen
Yeah, yeah,
to be taking time off. And it's like, dude, some people like me are dyspraxic, and we kind of need that
yeah,
slight balance, and that we need to sit down for a second after walking on sets for 8 hours a day.
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm glad that there is that change, but I'm like, not to try and drag you into these discussions,
No
but
worries, no
the,
worries.
the idea that disabled representation is put in the same conversation as like a in a negative connotation to like
Yes.
different religions and to different races, like, oh, the next doctor's going to be a Muslim woman in a wheelchair. And it's put in
Yeah.
that same conversation.
I think something that I've noticed a lot with those sorts of people that you mentioned is I've noticed disabilities being used as a means to highlight the ridiculous of quote modern wokeness as they describe it. Just recently there was I don't know the full story of this, so anyone can feel free to correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But very recently there's a new Spider-Man comic because they have a multiverse now of all the different Spider-Man that there can be, and a fan I think submitted a disabled fan submitted a version of the character who was in a wheelchair, but also their Spider-Man persona had like crutches that shot webs out of them, and I think that's sick. I think that's such a fun idea, And one of the lines is something like, it was great getting bitten by a radioactive spider. I wish it would have done something about my. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but like something about my back. That would have been nice. But I think that's wonderful. But it's unfortunate that some people see that as, well, that's just ridiculous. I can accept, a radioactive spider biting someone and then being able to shoot webs everywhere and climb up walls. You're telling me a disabled person getting bitten by a radioactive spider? No, I refuse. That's just too silly. It's very odd. It's very strange.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found it mad when I think it was Michael Hogan for the Times was talking about a box ticking bingo because you had Nadia Albina in the Halloween Apocalypse, and I was like,
Yes.
the Halloween Apocalypse, whether you like the story or not, is a story with Sontarans, with weeping angels, with diamond faced people, with a dog man with a Liverpudlian accent, and somehow this is the line you draw for being unrealistic.
Exactly. And what was amusing, I think what's most amusing about that to me, this figure again could be wrong, but I remember reading somewhere that about 20% of the UK population is suffers or experiences some form of disability within their lives, which is not an insignificant portion of the population at all. So if anything, it should be a lot higher than it has been historically, for disabled representation, because everyone's about, if a lot of the people that the ones I'm on about, they'll say, oh, but it's not realistic, we have to have accurate representations of demographics. Okay, then if you're there for that, then surely logically 20% of most casts, if they're set in modern day Britain, would have 20% of them would have some form of disability. But they don't think like that, do they?
Yeah, well, like, you can say whatever you want, I think, about whether it worked on screen, but I like the idea of like Ryan from series 11 and 12 being dyspraxic, and obviously I think there was maybe some issues and it was forgotten about sometimes, but
functionally I do have some issues with that, but I admire at least that the effort was made. It's a step forwards at least. But
and you've got characters like the upcoming Wilf, who is in a wheelchair, right, in these upcoming specials,
which was very special to me. Very special to me, because as a kid, I've sort of said this before a couple of times on streams and in different videos and things. As a kid, I always wondered, would I be able to get onto the TARDIS? Would they be able to? Because thing with wheelchairs is obviously struggle to get over lips occasionally, and anyone who knows the exterior of the TARDIS will know there's a little lip at the front before you go into the door, sort of thing. And I was like, would my chair get over that? And then obviously to see Wilf being carted in at full speed by David Tennant, that was, for me, that was like a small piece of like a childhood dream being fulfilled. For most people, it's David Tennant and Catherine Tate, which it is for me as well. But for me, it was seeing a wheelchair being put in the TARDIS. That was really special to me. And if that's a sign of things to come, then count me very excited about the future.
Yeah, I think the show has done a really good job in the past, like at least 10 years, in terms of disabled representation. Like you've had Eleanor Warwick playing Hannah in It Takes You Away, a young blind actress. Sophie Stone as Cass in Under the Lake, which I think resulted in one of the best like behind the sofa scare moments when she hears off, like she feels the vibrations of the shovel. I think and actors with dwarfism like Warwick Davis in Nightmare in Silver, Rachel Denning in Pyramid at the End of the World, Michael Keane in Can You Hear Me? Yes, I've got a list. This is not off the dome.
That's very impressive. No, that's very good. Yeah.
But yeah, and those are just like the visible ones. Like for example, Sacha Dhawan, who plays the Master, he's got Crohn's disease, which
does he? I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so like. Yeah, he's talked about it. He's quite open about it on Instagram about like advocacy for like Crohn's disease and stuff. And like generally speaking, that can in certain sectors qualify him as a disabled actor. He's not just the diversity hire because he's an Asian master. Maybe diversity is a bit more complicated and all encompassing than that, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe keep that down around certain people though. We don't want them using both of them. Imagine giving them more fuel. You're telling me he's part of two minorities? It's even worse than I thought.
How can I hate even harder somehow?
Yeah, that would be. It's like they just use it as a means to fuel their unwarranted hate even more so. But yeah, as you say, it's definitely been something that's progressing a lot over the last sort of decade, and I think obviously it's only getting stronger as we've sort of been saying. And Rose Isling Elves, obviously, it was mentioned earlier on in the live stream that I believe someone said that Russell T Davies and Ncuti Gatwa had followed her on Instagram. Also, I believe Andy Pryor, who's the one who made the statement about disabled representation in Doctor Who and is the current casting director, also followed her on Instagram. So, not saying it's definitely happening, but there's definitely, you know, some signs, or maybe it's just me looking into things, but that's kind of, you know, half of the course of being a Doctor Who fan, isn't it? Naturally.
Yeah, always seeing patterns and things that aren't there.
Pretty much, yeah. You know.
But yeah, because I give the BBC a lot of flack for several things, but I do think that it is able to use its status as a public service broadcaster, and Channel 4 as well, to actually say, you know, we are going to accommodate these different requirements, and that we are going to expand our talent pool that bigger companies with way more resources typically don't tend to do. Even if it's like, for the A Word, which stars Christopher Eccleston, there's a character in that with Down syndrome, and we follow like his story, and he gets a girlfriend, he moves in, he becomes independent, and he moves in with his girlfriend, and they're planning a spin-off series around those two. And,
oh wow!
And
cool.
I think it was delayed because of COVID. I assume it's still on the docket to be made, but I don't think that outside of Channel 4, any other broadcaster or big company would greenlight a series like that. And I'm glad that, you know, the BBC is able to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think something that I am really sort of personally like, what I would really like hope to see in the future moving forward is what I love to see the most in disabled representation personally, and obviously it's not an all-encompassing thing. Everyone has their own definitions of what they like to see in representation. But for me, I think a key thing is just presenting disabled people as just normal people living their lives. I think all too often it's very easy to present them as the victims in someone else's story, or a sort of obviously an empathetic character. But obviously empathy is not a bad thing, but I just mean in the sense of them not being their own sort of, they're not being sort of in control of like themselves and their own plot. They're something that motivates somebody else. And I think something that's really interesting to me about, obviously, if Rose Isling Elves, for example, was cast, is that she would be a central character doing that. And I think Russell has a good history of doing that in years and years. I forget the character's name now, but it's also played by Ruth Madeley, who's been speculated. She is just a disabled person living her life, and they don't really make an effort. They don't sugarcoat the reality of her life. They show things that are difficult for her, but equally, it's not the thing that defines her as a person. And I think that's something that's really important to me, is just to show how we are all just people at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's not, because I think all too often, and I think media has a big part to play in this, there are certain, stereotypical views you would have of a disabled person just by looking at them. You know, I think it's said, just is the way human brains work. Within the first 5 seconds of seeing someone, you have a version of them in your head within like 5 seconds of first laying eyes on them. Regressively, with disabled people, that comes with a lot of unfavorable interpretations of who they are, or perhaps, you know, sort of things that aren't based in, things that are based more in ignorance than in actual like knowledge of disabled people. And I think media can do a good job in saying they are, you know, they're normal people, and you don't have to dumb yourself down to interact with disabled people as well, because you'd be surprised how common that still is. As much as I like to try and come across as articulately as I possibly can, the amount of people who'll still talk to me like I'm about 4, it's like, no, I can understand you just fine, you know. And I understand that that's not always from a place of malice. It's just from a place of not understanding. But I think that's where things like media can really come in handy.
Yeah, there's the quote by Roger Ebert who said that movies were machines that generate empathy.
Yes, yeah.
And I think like obviously TV is in the same ballpark. There's a great series called The Cleaner on the BBC. You can watch it on iPlayer, where Greg Davis plays a crime scene cleaner, and he winds up in Ruth Madeley's house. Like, she's playing a character, not Ruth Madeley as herself, and he has no idea how to act around her. Like he'll drop an orange on the floor, I think, and he's like, "Oh, do I get that for her? I have no idea what the social norms are here." And it's played for comedy, but I think it's just a good way to, like, if you see that on screen, you're like, "Oh, I wouldn't know how to react in that situation either," and you can actually have it explained through storytelling. And
Absolutely,
I think Doctor Who's a great vessel to do that. And you say that's agenda pushing, but that's just media. And like,
that's what media is always set out to do, as you say. And it's the sort of thing of, like, a lot of people, because I think a lot of people, we all sort of, to some extent, fear what we don't know or don't understand. And I think a key thing that media can do is sort of deconstruct that and say, actually, this is just fine. I think that's another thing as well. Like, I think there'll sort of be a fear to help disabled people, or like ask in case of doing the wrong thing. And I think obviously be respectful as you would be to anyone. But I think for me, my biggest thing I could say is just, treat anyone, including disabled people, how you would want to be treated. And I think, if you think that they look like they need help, ask, but obviously don't, like, obviously I'm not, it varies from person to person, but I'm just saying, like, I think for me personally, if I look like I'm struggling to pick something up, you can ask, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be like, no, how dare you? But, like, I think it's just, I like with anything, it just, it takes time for people to understand these things. What's interesting, I think, about, I would argue, obviously, this is only from my own subjective experience, but I think the understanding of, maybe it's because disability is such a diverse thing, it's taken longer for people to understand certain things with regards to disability, as as opposed to perhaps other minority groups. I could be wrong there, but, like, I still get people, or I did when I was in school, like high school, secondary school, being like, "Oh, it must be really, really great being in a wheelchair." It's like, I get what you mean. It's not in a malicious sense, but it's like, there's so much more to it than just, oh, they get to sit down all day. That sounds great. As much as I wish that's all it was, But I think, it's just a means of educating people. And the BBC, that's something they've always strived to do. I think one of their, like, wasn't there one of their earliest broadcasts, like the coronation of Queen Elizabeth? Like, it's always been a broadcaster that, informs the nation of things. So I don't see informing them of, how to act around disabilities or disabilities in general to be agenda pushing. I see that just the BBC's natural purpose in the 21st century, really.
Yeah, and there's a point you make in your video about the topic where when you were young, you went to a Catholic school, was it?
I did, yeah.
So you were the diversity student because you weren't Catholic.
I was Catholic and disabled. That's two ticking boxes. Guarantee I'm going to get 5 videos with the yellow text on me. No, but in all seriousness, I was.
And I think that because, sorry to interrupt, but I think that because you were in that environment with younger kids, you've kind of made that environment a better place just by being there, because when you're young and you're so malleable, you got a spongy brain, and it normalizes different people, which is why I think but like, you see a lot of disabled presenters on children's shows, and I think that's partly to normalize it as well, which I think is important.
I think that's great. I think that's an absolutely great thing, because, as you said, through formative years, that shapes how you view the world. And if you're exposed to disabled people early on, it doesn't seem in any way out of place, as it shouldn't in adulthood. I think that the story I was going to bring up from that video was just first day in primary school. It's one of the only things I remember from primary school at all, but it sticks out so vividly. I remember first day, I was in, obviously, mainstream education, go in for my first day, and every single child, all 30 of them, stare at once. And you get that moment of, like, why is this different? And but the thing is, what I've come to realize through being older is that it shouldn't be, and maybe one day we'll get to the point where it isn't, but for now it is. But so I think the role of of everyone, and especially of media, is to make it so it is just something that you don't take a second to even question, especially with young people as well.
Yeah, and I think that there's been some great strides over the past decade
Absolutely,
to make it a more, like, the media industry a much more inclusive place. There is still a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely,
But yeah, like, especially when it comes to like working from home as well, that's a big part of that can really help out.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I've got a friend with cerebral palsy who's in a wheelchair, who is like has worked incredibly hard for the past 10 years, and now she's like a leading casting director at ITV. That's something that maybe like 20 years ago would not have been on the table.
No,
But
it wouldn't have been a thing that was thought of. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's fascinating. I've spoken to like a couple of people who obviously I speak to a lot of people really, but I've spoken to a couple of people who've specifically gone into media with disabilities and stuff, and hearing their stories and how how they've sort of managed to work their way through the shortcomings, and how the industry has slowly evolved around them, albeit slowly, but it has evolved around them. I think is a really a really special thing. Like I think it's obviously like something that's great in terms of the last few years is that now buildings can't be, there's certain accessibility requirements they have to reach to like be built. There's certain requirements for new buildings, and I think that's a great step because as I said, that wasn't always the case. So I think it's just slowly, little bit by little bit, that we're actually going to get to a point where it is just a thing that can be done. Like with Doctor Who in particular, though, like I think a common point I see a lot, which is one that I never really personally understand, is like, but how would like a disabled character in Doctor Who work logistically? Because I see a lot of people get like stuck on this in particular, like the logistics of it, and I think there's not really, for me, there's not many logistical issues. Obviously, people bring up, well, what if you go on, the planet that's got dangerous terrain? Well, the Doctor would probably just not pick that planet. It's like if your family member is a disabled person, you're not going to go, right, let's go to the Grand Canyon. That sounds like a fun day out. You probably just pick somewhere else. Like Doctor Who is such an infinite thing. So I think getting hung up on that is such a minor. And with historicals as well, Doctor Who's always played it pretty fast and loose with its rules when it comes to, requiring, when it comes to like historical accuracy or the way, minority groups are treated within the past. That's a whole other conversation. But, the 12th Doctor says to build parts in thin ice, history's a whitewash and all this sort of stuff. So it's already been incredibly malleable with that. So I don't see why that can't extend to disabled people as well. Obviously, I suppose there's the element of like, obviously the past is a lot less accessible, but that's the case for most minorities. So,
yeah, I think the point that you bring up about landing on a planet with difficult terrain, I think fans can sometimes forget that Doctor Who is a show that people write and they can control the variables. It's not like the TARDIS is something they have to logistically think, okay, it has to land here this week. Like you can control that, of course.
We have to go through an asteroid with rocks all over it. It's like, no, they can do whatever. They can, if they want to go to like BMX World one day, and just watch us go all over the ramps and stuff, they can do that. I can make that joke. I'm allowed.
You can, and you can inbox Russell T Davies on Instagram and be like, "Hey, here's the idea."
Right, yeah. Hear me out.
You open the message, "Hear me out," and then it's that like message pending. Tharis is typing.
do you know Wheels, the guy who does like tricks in his wheelchair? I don't know whether you know.
Oh no, I haven't.
He does like obviously like he flies over ramps. I think they should do a celebrity guest episode with Wheels in it. I don't know whether anyone knows who that is. And like just have him like he's basically the disabled Tony Hawk is what he is. Just do that for an episode. Like why not? It certainly wouldn't be the strangest guest cast for certain. So yeah.
No, I would watch an entire spin-off series based around Wheels as a companion to
Yeah,
Doctor Who.
that would be very fun.
The
Yeah.
Wheels in space, says Fatum Shook in the
The
chat.
wheels in space. There we go. You know what? We get that to trend. Get it to Big Russ. I'm sure it'll make it happen for us. You know.
It's like, well, you're the master at making things trend at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
but
The funny thing is that happened largely by accident. It was just like, oh, it'd be funny if everyone tweeted Absorb for a bit, and there you go. There you go with that. Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
No worries.
But are you at the BFI next weekend?
I am. Yes,
Awesome.
I will be at the BFI next weekend for the Abominables. Isn't it? Use the Abominable Snowman, isn't it? Embarrassing if I got that wrong. It is, yeah.
It's the Wheels in space now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, I'll gladly buy you a drink as a thanks for being here on this stream.
Wonderful.
But I'm sure most people in the chat know who you are. But let us know where you can find more of your leak work and
Yes,
and anything else you want to plug or talk about.
Yeah. So mainly just the YouTube channel, which is Tharies, which is just THRARRIES, and also on Twitter it's at ThariesYT. I think that's mostly everything. Yeah. I suppose, if there's one last thing I could say is that just thank you for having me, and I hope you have a very nice rest of your stream. I hope I came across well. I know that with topics like this, it is sensitive to like a lot of people, so I hope that I said everything correctly and without anyone misinterpreting or anything. So I hope that went okay.
I think you're all good. I think this is a good environment. But thank you so much for chatting about this, Tharies. Massively appreciate your time. Have a terrific rest of your evening.
Will do. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care, buddy.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye bye.
It's always good to chat with Thary. It's always good to have him on. Check out his channel. There is a link in the description below. People asking about the side camera. It was on Discord webcam. I don't think he would have had the side camera set up, and I didn't want to put him in that position. But no, you can watch the side camera on Tharies' YouTube channel, so that's not for my platform. That's something to go and check out on there. Go and check out his channel, link in the description below, and also to his Twitter. He is a leak extraordinaire, so if you need any behind the scenes rumblings on the Centenary special and Russell T Davies 2 with Series 14 and beyond, you can check that out.